What is going on, fam, with Peru? When I heard that they released a former president, I was like, Castillo's freed. And somebody said, no, Castillo's not freed. Why don't you tell us what's going on, fam?
Yeah, so last night, for me, Wednesday night, uh they released former president and former dictator Alberto Fujimori from prison. He was
Oh,
serving a 25-year sentence for crimes against humanity, essentially bribery, corruption. If you can pull up the tweet, cheese slice, that would be great. And they released him because it was due to a pardon. So he was also in jail, by the way, for office usurpation as well. And he was serving in this Barbadillo prison, which is in Lima, in the district of Ate. He was serving this 25-year sentence, so he only served 16 years of it. And this was a decision made
bro.
by the Constitutional Court, which ordered his immediate release and restitution for a pardon that he had received in 2017, but this pardon didn't go through. But then we knew this was going to happen, actually, okay? Because if you can just scroll down, because his daughter, Keiko Fujimori,
Fuji.
remember,
Yeah.
she ran against
Keiko.
Castillo,
Yeah.
and she tried to take the election and she failed. She ran several times, and Castillo got in, but she was also, her and her party had huge influence in Congress. Peru's Congress is far more powerful than the executive branch, which is a problem, as the last few presidents have been ousted. And so they were instrumental in this coup that removed Pedro Castillo, US-backed coup, from office. And Castillo is now in jail. So let me put it to you this way. You have Pedro Castillo, a guy that was taking on the multinational corporations, that was ready to do so. He didn't even get a chance to do it. He wasn't the strongest candidate in the sense of having the political acumen and the political
Yeah.
gravitas of being able to do these things. There were more radical candidates. He wasn't that radical of a candidate. He came from a union background. He was a teacher before. He was a rural man, and he didn't really anticipate what would be done to him. And he, of course, was removed. He fell in a trap, and he was removed from office, and he's now in jail. So you have Castillo in jail. He was put in there by these powerful big business corporations in Peru who want to work with the West, who want to involve the West. And around all of this, of course, was the lithium, right? And the lithium and these minerals that are in Peru. And now you have a person who was described by many, most people in Peru today, as a dictator, who was somebody that led the country in just complete and total chaos. And this was, of course, going back, I wrote an article about this, to the Shining Path. This is why the Shining Path also rose up, because of a similar economic despair and corruption in Peru that had been happening even before Fujimori, and Fujimori's own members of his party were complicit in working with the CIA to oust and kill this group, the Shining Path, to get rid of them. But they ended up killing hundreds and thousands of innocent people, mainly, of course, poor people from the mountain and rural regions, the indigenous people of Peru. And that led to, of course, him being tried and imprisoned for human rights violations. The CIA's hand was involved in that. You can read this article on my Substack. It's a lot of history there. But basically, this is why he's the reason why Peru got into this deep chaos where neoliberalism ruled. And his daughter was a huge part of that. So now you have the return of Fujimori, as we predicted it, fam. Remember, we said if she got in power, she was going to free her dad. That was one of the fears. Well, she didn't become president, but she did extend her tentacles in power, and she did manage to help free her
She
father.
did. And Pedro Castillo sits in jail. And fam, I just want to point to everybody out that fam was on the ground for the Convo Couch covering this election. I couldn't find the picture of some of the supporters with the big hat, but those big pencils were everywhere. And it's just kind of crazy that this man won the election, fam, but yet Keiko is the one who really obtained some power. And as we know, the CIA back the decisions of jailing Castillo because he was going to try to change the Constitution. And Fam just pointed out, fair criticisms. He didn't make a lot of allies within the region. He didn't recognize Nicaragua, Daniel Ortega's presidency, right? He, had talked about the negatives of that. He went along with a lot of lines. And when we were in Peru, some of the people we said, when we would talk to waiters, bartenders, and whatnot, they felt he was very weak, that he was trying to appease both sides. They would rather him appease against their wills and just appease the other side and run the country. He made both sides happy, and by doing so, he made nobody happy, and that led to him kind of some of his I think, the Peruvian constitution thinking, well, this guy doesn't have enough allies, so we can do away with him and put him in jail like we put away any leftist reformist type of president in Peru. The Congress holds the keys to the kingdom here. Throw him in jail because the West is going to back us because they don't want that constitution changed because they want those rare minerals that Peru has. Peru sits on the lithium triangle, and the West wants it. This is about resource extraction, ladies and gentlemen, and it doesn't surprise me that Keiko got daddy released. Hey, he did serve 16 years, fam. I guess we can take that as somewhat of a victory, no?
It's 9 years too soon, and he has health problems, and that was what they led with. He did come out with a like a tube on. If you actually, I have the video. I believe I posted the video. I don't know if you showed it, but if you show the video, he's released from jail and with this tube.
I know he looks weak, ma'am. He looks weak.
He looks very weak, right? Okay, but again, what ended up happening was the supporters of the victims, the families of the victims from his war crimes were protesting outside Palacio de Justicia, the Palace of Justice, direct translation. But yeah, they were protesting outside of there, and so he looks very old and weak and whatever, but I mean, this man did commit so many crimes that hurt so many people. And you have Peruvians divided. You have some Peruvians that felt like, well, he westernized the country because it is, that sector that thinks, the West is the best and blah, blah, blah. But then you have the other sectors that said he ruined the country and he took the country towards neoliberalism and towards being pretty much ruled by the interests of the West in the United States. And you can see some of those interests when you go to a mall in Peru, when you go to certain places in Lima, of course, the capital. And you can see that Peru's still right now fighting. And fam, this has a lot to do when we're talking about resource extraction. I have to talk about Peru's neighbor, Venezuela. Venezuela and what's happening with Guyana, because this is a very complicated situation that I don't think a lot of people have understood correctly. So
let me say this much, ma'am, really quickly.
Yeah.
Before we jump to the next section, because I know there's a lot of people out there who are wondering why Japanese culture is so embedded into Peru and whatnot. I will say this much, because the ceviche in Peru is pretty much very similar to sashimi, where it's raw. It's not like Mexican ceviche where it's hard and like spongy and stuff. It's some of the freshest stuff there. So maybe some of the fish, fam, is what led so many Japanese people to once upon a time migrate over to Peru. The seafood is amazing over